Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. Thank you for tuning in to another Breakfast by the Bay. My name is Captain Meghan, and behind the camera today we have Miss Reagan. And again, thank you for tuning in to Breakfast by the Bay. We hope that you had a fantastic weekend. Today, we are going to talk all about trash. Not only trash, but as you can see, we're also going to be talking about recycling and composting as well. Now, if you have any questions throughout this segment, drop them in the comments and Miss Reagan will let me know, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. And also, let us know what school you're tuning in from. We would love to know. Again, welcome to Breakfast by the Bay. My name is Captain Meghan, and we have Reagan behind the camera. Today, we're going to talk about trash. But like I said, not only trash, we're going to talk about recycling and composting as well. Now, the first thing that I want you guys to start thinking about is about all the trash that you create in your everyday lives. So maybe start thinking about your normal day and think about how much trash you create. And once you start thinking about that, we can go into thinking about, well, where does that trash go? And is all of what I have actually trash? So when I started thinking about this, I like to break it down into our recycling, composting, and trash. Now, let's start talking about recycling. I am sure that you have all heard about recycling before, but let's go over it again so that we know what materials can be recycled and what materials can't be recycled. So again, if you're just tuning in, my name's Captain Meghan. We have Miss Reagan behind the camera. Welcome to Breakfast by the Bay. Let's get started about talking all about recycling. So recycling can be broken down into 4 different categories, as you can see on my whiteboard. The first one that we're going to talk about is fibers. So this is things like paper, cardboard, or cartons. This is no wood or clothing. So the biggest thing when recycling fibers is we want to make sure that that cardboard is compacted, it's squished down, like a pizza box is compressed. Our paper is not shredded, and our cartons can actually have the cover put back on them. Now, you might have a question about, well, my pizza box has a little bit of grease on the bottom of it. Can I still recycle it? The answer is yes, you can. As long as that pizza box isn't saturated with the grease, you can definitely still recycle it. Our next category for recycling is metals. So this is things like cans, lids, and even tinfoil. No pots or pans. We want to make sure that our metal cans are rinsed out and have nothing left in them. For our tinfoil, we want to make sure that it's as clean as it can be and crumpled up into a ball. Again, no pots and pans. Even though it's made out of metal, it can't be recycled. Our next category underneath recycling is glass. And we want to think about this as anything of bottles and jars. No drinking glasses. Even though those are made out of glass, they can't be recycled. We have to stick to bottles and jars. Now the thing with this, if you have a glass container with a metal lid, you need to make sure that that metal lid gets taken off the glass container, but they both can be put into the recycling bin, just not together. Again, you want to make sure that the containers, the bottles and the jars, are empty and rinsed out. Our last category for recycling is our plastics. When we think about recycling plastics, we want to think about recycling containers only. No plastic bags or styrofoam can go into the mixed recycling system here in Rhode Island. When we think about those containers, we think about things like maybe a cup from a coffee shop, or a container that we have maybe some old food in. Remember, we want to make sure that it's empty and washed out as well. So these are just some helpful hints to make sure that we are recycling as well as we can. Now our next category is composting. Now some of you may or may not have heard of composting before, but the definition of it is a mixture of decaying organic substances used to fertilize soil. So what happens is we put things into the compost and it gets to break down and it actually turns into a really rich soil that we can use to grow new things. So some helpful hints with composting would be it has to be organic material, such as uncooked fruits and vegetable scraps. Now, we say uncooked because a lot of the times when we cook fruits or vegetables, we use sauces or butters or oils, and that can't go into the compost. So whenever you're thinking about composting, we're thinking more of like banana peels or apple peels or orange peels. All can definitely go into the compost. We can also put coffee grinds and filters, tea bags, and eggshells can all go into the compost. Things that cannot go into the compost are pet waste, meat, fish bones, or meat scraps, fat, lard, or grease. You don't want any of that into your compost at all. Now, check with your local town or city to see if they have a composting program near you, because sometimes they will pick up some composting debris like leaves and grass clippings in your area. But you can also try to start your own composting project at home. So now that we broke down our trash into recycling and composting, what's left for our trash? I hope it's a little bit less than what you thought in the beginning. So our everyday household waste would have to go into that trash. Hangers, I have this one up here because sometimes when we think of hangers, we think of it's a plastic good, right? And plastic can be recycled, but remember, it's containers only. Dishes and glassware would have to go into the trash. Electronics and toys. With our electronics, we would have to make sure that we look into how we can dispose properly of those electronics. And then our cooked food would also have to go into the trash. Now, the big question is, what can you do to lessen your waste? So what we're going to do now is we're going to move over to my table, and we're actually going to talk a little bit about a trash timeline. We're going to see how long it takes for materials to break down in the natural environment. But as we do that, I want you to start thinking about this question right here. What can you do to lessen your waste? So let's move on over here. Awesome job. So if you're just tuning in, my name is Captain Meghan, and we have Miss Reagan behind the camera today. And we just learned about recycling, composting, and trash. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do an activity to see how long it takes for materials to break down in the natural environment. So I'm going to go through my list of items that I have here. And if you have a guess for how long it takes for these items to break down, you can drop it in the comments and Miss Reagan will let me know. So my first item is a banana peel. Remember, we don't want to throw the whole banana in there. We want to try to eat it first, but the peel can definitely go in there. We have a newspaper. We do have Miss Reagan's breakfast. It's her whole apple, but she's going to eat the apple, and then she can have just the apple core left. We have cardboard, or maybe even a cardboard box. We have a carton. We have tin, aluminum, a plastic bottle, a glass jar, and a styrofoam container. So let's move back on over to our banana peel, and let's take a guess how long you think that our banana peel would take to break down. Any guesses out there? All right, so I'm going to help you out, and I'm going to get us started. Our banana peel would take about 3 to 5 weeks to break down. So as we go through our timeline, I think you can probably tell that it's going to take a little bit longer for each item to break down. So we have 3 to 5 weeks for our banana peel. For our newspaper, we have 6 weeks to break down. All right, then our next one is our apple core. Now we had 3 to 5 weeks and 6 weeks. Our apple core would take about 2 months to break down. A little bit longer than I would have expected. Our cardboard would take about 3 months. Our container would take about 4 to 5 months. Now, we're gonna go for a big jump now. We have our tin can right here, and we're not into months anymore. We're in 80 to 100 years for this tin to break down. The next one we have is our aluminum can, and that would take about 200 years to break down. Our next one is our plastic bottle, and it would take about 450 years to break down, but we're gonna put a little star next to that one, and we're gonna come back and talk about this plastic bottle in just a few seconds. Our glass jar is forever unknown. Our glass likes to break down and can break and shatter into tiny, tiny little pieces. A lot of times we might even find it as sea glass if we're walking along the shore sometimes. But it's forever unknown because those little pieces are still around. The same is true with our styrofoam. It's forever unknown. So I know that we were going to talk about this plastic bottle again, and I said that it took about 450 years for it to break down, and I said a little star after it. Now we're gonna come on over here, and maybe Miss Reagan can zoom in on these little pieces right here. And those are actually all very small plastic pieces, and we call them microplastics. So even though that bottle is breaking down over hundreds of years, there's still tiny little plastic pieces left, and we call them microplastics. Now the thing with microplastics is they're still in the environment, and a lot of them get into the bay. As you can see here, all these plastic pieces are floating in the water. And I bet you're thinking, that's probably not great for all of the animals that live in the water. And you would be right. It's not great to have all those tiny plastic pieces in the water, because the animals living there would probably eat them. And it's not good for them, and it's not good for us. But there are lots of things that you can do to rethink how we are using plastic in our everyday lives. And I have this awesome poster here of 8 ways you can use less plastic. So let's go through them so we can start thinking about how we use different materials in our everyday lives. So our first way is that we can skip the bottled water and use a reusable water bottle instead. The next one is we can refuse single-use straws or buy reusable straws. Metal or glass straws are good alternatives. The next one you might not have thought about, but we want to avoid using microbeads found in face washes and toothpaste. You'd have to look at the label for those. The next one is buy products made from recycled materials with little or no packaging. Number 5 is choose to carry reusable bags for all of your shopping. Number 6, repair, upgrade, or turn in your electronics for recycling. Number 7, we wear clothing made of non-synthetic fibers. Polyester clothing are made from plastic. And number 8 is compost your food scraps to create enriched soil for landscaping. So those are a few ways that you can rethink about using plastic in your everyday life. And I bet there are a lot more ideas out there too. Now, I hope that you guys had a lot of fun learning about recycling and trash and composting today. And I hope it kind of got the wheels turning in your head to think about your everyday use of your materials and where that waste goes. Does it have to go in the trash, or can you compost it or recycle it? Now, if you want to have more fun at home, we do have a game for you. As you can see, we have collected different materials here, and you can do the same thing at home, and you can play a relay race game at home. All you need to do is collect some items and have 3 pieces of paper, one that says trash, one that says composting, and one that says recycling. You would place these 3 pieces of paper on the floor or maybe a countertop, and what you would do is you would gather up all of these materials. You could break into 2 teams if you have enough people at home, and you would each take a different item, and you would run to your paper and you would have to place your items on the correct sheet, so these both can be recycled, and then you can run back and high-five your teammate to go with a new item. Or if you don't have many people at home, you can just pick up another item and then try to run and sort it and run back and forth. You can go for a timed amount if you want to, or a number of items. But it could be a fun game that you can play right at home. If you guys had any questions, you can drop them in the comments and we will get back to you. And if you like the work that Save the Bay is doing and you want to help support our mission, you can tap the link in the comments. And we hope that you guys will be back tomorrow to tune in for another Breakfast by the Bay. Thanks, guys.